This is being recorded, so we'll send out the link afterwards and it'll be available to everyone up on our YouTube channel, Metric Insights, along with a bunch of other stuff we've done previously. Feel free to check that out. We will have some time for Q&A at the end, so if you have questions, pop them into the chat window or the Q&A window. If relevant, we'll answer them as we go along, or again, we'll leave some time at the end. And we are going to be doing a couple of giveaways at the end for anyone who hangs on for that. So feel free to stick around, and we'll be doing that as part of the Q&A. I think that's it. So Marius is with me again today. Hi, Marius.
Hello, Mike.
So with that, I think, yeah, let's get kicked off.
All right, well, good. Let's just jump right in. We're really excited about what we're going to talk about today. To just frame the conversation, I think those of you that are in organizations that have more than, let's say, a few hundred dashboards, if your dashboard counts, the report counts over the thousands or tens of thousands, you know already that really business intelligence has gotten out of hand. There's just there's a known problem. There are lots of issues with existing environments. Specifically, these three things are pretty pervasive issues. Environments tend to be ungoverned. Sure, you've got security, but really your end users don't know which reports are certified, which ones can be trusted or not. So there's just kind of a Wild West out there in regards to people self-servicing and publishing content. There's a whole lot of clutter. We've had customers and folks we've talked to that have said that sometimes they found 50, 60, sometimes 90% of their reporting in their environment is not actively used, right? Just people keep on adding to the pile, new reports, different people creating reports from different teams, different dashboards on similar subject areas, and creating kind of duplicates or worse yet, near duplicates where the same measures are computed different ways. There's that sort of almost cliche situation where people show up at meetings with completely different numbers. So that's just a really big issue, and something that's pervasive across organizations. And then these issues contributes to this overall underutilization, right? The end result is that even though you have lots of great reports in the ecosystem, there are these gems that have great value that are maybe gaining usage. Overall, the ecosystem is underutilized. Lots and lots of reports that are great but could be gathering dust because users feel overwhelmed by the clutter, by the lack of governance, and therefore they just don't take the time to find the right reports and use the right reports to generate value. Now, of course, I think you've heard, just like all of us, we've heard the promise of AI as it's over the last 6 months in particular. There's been a steady drumbeat saying that dashboards are dead. So this problem is kind of going to be solved in the near term by virtue of deploying AI. This is basically all going to be solved by asking your data. And then the premise is that, look, the idea of dashboards are for people to self-serve and get their answers. So why do they need the dashboards if AI is there? We can just ask the AI system, and by virtue of the fact that it can answer any question, right? If it's properly configured, people get their answers that way. No need for dashboards. They can be sort of put into the trash heap.
Yeah, so I'm sure a lot of people on this call, and why they're on it is they've probably started on this AI for BI journey, Mario. So it'd be interesting to do. I'm just going to launch a quick poll here in the background. You should see it pop up on your screen here. Be good to just do a quick poll and see, are people looking at these technologies and these solutions, and if so, where are you on your journey? And we'll leave this running for the next few slides and share some results at the end.
Great. So I think that'll be good for everyone to see where other folks are, right? Which will be where they are in their journey relative to others. So that'll be great. So while you're filling out the poll, let's talk a little bit about the fact that, in fact, this is a naive approach. It's from 100,000 foot view. It might seem perfectly rational that, dashboards are not needed. But in fact, if you look at the evidence on the ground, uh, the AI for BI solutions that are naive, that are sort of just intended to replace a dashboarding and kind of today they are largely failing. You can look at any number of studies, depending upon how you measure it, it might be a 70% failure rate, it might be a 95% failure rate, but the failure rate is very, very high. Right. And so I think, before we kind of go into what our solution is, it's helpful to understand, what are the reasons why these are failing, because we talk to people all the time about their initiatives, and the same themes largely show up, right? First of all, we see over and over again that these systems tend to be limited because the lack business context. So if you think about how your users interact with information, they're not just asking a simple question based on columns in your database, right? They're asking questions based on business terminology. And if your system doesn't fully understand all that terminology, it doesn't understand your product hierarchy, it doesn't understand your organizational hierarchy, key abbreviations and terms and definitions that are there, then it can't even get out of the starting gate as far as accurately answering users' questions. Additionally, there's this complex and fairly intricate semantic layer that's there in the enterprise, and it's not all in one place, and is often not in the place where AI agents can fully access it. So these are fundamental problems. Maybe your AI agent can access the databases and it knows how to, in your tables, it knows how to join those tables together and it has the definitions of columns. So maybe it has that level. But what about, the English language definitions of those columns? What about formulas that are inside of your Power BI semantic layer, or inside of your Tableau data source or Tableau workbook, right? That's part of the semantic model that users are using when they're consuming it today, dashboards today. So if that's not present for your AI, then it can't possibly answer questions correctly. Furthermore, just the idea of creating a siloed ecosystem where your AI sits in one place. I'm going to go to Databricks Genie. I'm going to go to Snowflake Cortex or what have you, and your BI sits completely somewhere else. It's a different destination from a dashboard. Is completely flawed, right? Because it creates this disjointed experience where now I've got two sets of answers to things, and these things don't exactly line up. I don't understand how they work together, and that is not going to be the thing that drives users to come in and ask questions and work with these systems effectively. And the end result here is that if you've got this system where there's a lot of clutter, where maybe the metadata layer is not all the way complete, it's missing some semantics, it's missing some context, it's going to mean that they're going to be ungoverned answers. You're going to get answers that come back where the AI can't bring the receipts, right? It can't show the user, I'm telling you it's X, and here's how you can check me on it. And that's not going to work. It's not going to work because number one, when it hallucinates, then you're going to have a bad answer, and that's going to tank the entire system. An executive uses something, gets an answer, it's incorrect, they're never going to come back to it. But secondarily, even if the answer is right, your users are well aware that even the most capable models today are hallucinating, right? If you look, Opus 4.7, for example, is the best model out there today. It has, depending upon which measure you use, has a hallucination rate of someplace between 7% and in excess of 30%, right? When it doesn't know the answer, and it'll make something up. So that is a very high, even at the low end of that range. If somewhere around 1 out of 10 questions, I don't know. I know I'm going to get some kind of hallucination potentially if I'm asking something it doesn't know. Then I need to have a way to trust that answer. And if the AI can't show me how it can substantiate that and give me something that I know that I can ground the answer in, then by definition, I'm not going to have trust. So I think the key miss here, the thing that I think everyone that's sort of deploying these solutions, this naive approach is missing, is this fundamental truth that is really obvious once you think about it, which is that your dashboards and reports are the semantic model for your business, right? You may have a semantic layer inside of your data catalog, inside your database. You have semantics defined in Power BI. You have all of these things are absolutely true. But when you look at the user experience to your business user, the dashboard is the semantic layer because it is the thing that conveys the meaning behind the data. It's telling them what the results are and how those results are put together. So if that's true, then there are a number of things that are very important. First and foremost is that the certified dashboard is de facto data dictionary for your business user. It doesn't matter what you put into your Elation or Atlan or Calibra system in terms of how something is defined. If your trusted Tableau dashboard is defining a metric differently than how it's defined in that data catalog, that definition in the Tableau dashboard is going to be the definition that's true because that's how users are consuming the data. So certified dashboards are effectively, at the end, the data dictionary. This is because they have those agreed upon KPI definitions, right? So however it is, again, they're agreed upon because they're widely used. So de facto, whether you've gotten everyone in the room to say, yes, we agree on this revenue definition or not, the fact that everyone's consuming the dashboard that has revenue defined a certain way means that that's how it's defined. The calculations in a certified dashboard should be validated. Some business analyst or user, it's checked, has made sure that they're consistent with other sources. It's not some kind of a number that's generated by AI using a non-heuristic method, some probabilistic approach that may be right some of the time, maybe wrong some of the time, right? It's grounded in reality and it's unchanging. There's a familiarity to it, which we cannot sort of understate, right? Users are used to seeing the dashboard, they're used to seeing the data in that dashboard, they understand it. And that means that by definition, they trust it because they know that it's been delivering the correct information reliably over a sustained period of time. And it speaks the language of your business, right? It doesn't, dashboards don't typically have column names with a whole bunch of unreadable abbreviations like your table structures might. These are things they have, user terminology because they're built for users. So for these reasons, you want to think about each of your trusted dashboards as essentially a mini data dictionary and a de facto data dictionary that is acting, it supersedes almost whatever you might have in your own data dictionary. But the dashboards, of course, have structural limits. And these limits, get in the way of getting effectiveness, right? They're not by themselves, they're clearly not enough, right? Because there is this clutter problem. I think no matter how hard you try in a distributed organization with lots and lots of content publishers, over time, clutter is going to build. It's very hard to get people to clean things up. Oftentimes, it's not even clear who is responsible for a particular piece of content because it was created by someone who's left the company 6 months ago. So it's really hard to keep everything pristine in your source systems. Furthermore, even the really good dashboards have a sense of rigidity to them. They've been built to answer a very specific set of questions. And if you want to stray off the path and ask a very different question, well, that's probably not the right dashboard. You got to find a slightly different dashboard. Maybe your dashboard you're looking at has the current month snapshot and allows you to do slicing and dicing across that. But if you want to see a trend line, well, there's a different dashboard that shows you that. So it's a problem from a perspective of beyond the clutter. You're going to have this rigid set of dashboards that creates this plethora of places I've got to check for information. And that contributes to this needle in a haystack problem, right? So I know that today, any given moment, there's a dashboard in my ecosystem that's got something valuable to say. but which one is it? Well, I don't know. There might be 10 or 20 that are accessible to me that are good, plus a whole bunch that I'm not sure about. And then even if I open a dashboard that I know I can trust, which filter combination shows me something that is actually insightful, right? Because I'm looking not to see the same information that I saw yesterday. I want to know, where is it that things have changed in a material way? Where is it that there's something really significant that needs my attention? And that is truly a needle in a haystack problem, right? It's almost impossible for an end user to do that without spending an inordinate amount of time looking. And people are busy; they're just not going to do it. So the key insight here is not to throw away your dashboards, but to build on them, right? To bring in the AI layer, to bring in the automation and the intelligence capability and the unlocks the promise that provides, but to do that in a way that where it can sit side by side and in fact around the reporting that you have today. And it can use existing reporting as a way to ground and generate trust for the answers that it provides. And the key other insight around this is that you ought not to expect your users to always go find the insights. Even if you have an AI in place, your users may not know the question that they need to ask today to get something insightful. So you also need to provide a capability where the insights will go and seek the appropriate user. That is, the relevant user needs to take action on that particular insight. What does that mean? Well, it means that you need an AI layer that monitors the information in your dashboards, though for each user that they're relying on. Their agent, their little mini analyst that every day goes and looks at everything and says, okay, across all these different dimensions that user cares about, what are all the things that are happening in the dashboards that they care about? Discards all the things that are not insignificant, and then identifies only the things that are changing in a material way that are important. And for the signal, not for the noise, it will detect it and then push that to the user. And it will push that user not just with information to say, hey, this thing changed, but it will tell the user why it changed, right? It does that work that you'd expect any human analyst to do, to do that next step analysis and say, okay, my revenues dropped. Well, why? Which products contributed to it? Is there a geographical contribution? What's happening under the covers, right? So delivering it with the dashboard in mind, with the fact that something changed, and with why it changed. And then giving that to the user wherever it is that they might live, in their email, in Teams, in Slack, so that even if that user isn't taking time in that day to go check that dashboard in that particular filter combination, that critical insight, they don't miss it, right? And they can take action on it. So in Metric Insights, with the solution that we're going to show you in a moment, it's all built around delivering exactly what I just described. And there are three distinct pillars to the solution. The first pillar is all about having a governed environment for your BI and AI. So that means having a place where all the dashboards in that ecosystem are trusted. They're all things, it's not the duplicative content, it's not the obsolete content, it's not the stuff that was built 6 months ago and the person's left and it's no longer valid. It's only the things that continue to be valid and coherent. And additionally, it also does the same for any AI agents that you might have created. So if you've got a whole bunch of folks building Snowflake or Databricks agents or Microsoft Fabric agents, well, which agents are really ready for prime time and have been verified, have been QA'd, have had some kind, or can be trusted? Only those agents are accessed in this ecosystem. So that's the first foundational pillar. Then on top of that, we'll show you our concierge offering. Now, what concierge does is it's the intelligence layer that does the routing. So when there's a question, the user says, what's going on with the sales, or what are the things that I need to focus on? It will look across an entire universe of things that are available to the user, of course, with security applied, and then route to the appropriate agent or data source to get that information. And it's going to operate not just off of the agents that you've posted, but also off of the data that's present in your Power BI semantic model and in your Tableau data sources. So everything that's in that certified report, the entire semantic model is accessible to our concierge to ask questions. Any definitions are all accessible. Any glossary terms you've brought in from your data catalog are all accessible. So it has a 360-degree view of your semantic model and therefore can generate the right question from the right data source by distributing those requests across the trusted agents and data in your ecosystem. And then the third pillar is that proactive element that I just spoke about, right? So it says, we're not going to just wait for users to ask questions, but we're going to proactively look across enterprise KPIs and important things that are out there, identify when there's variances, and then perform root cause analysis on those variances. And based on that analysis, push all of that to the user so that they can understand what's going on and take action. So with that, why don't we take a look?
Take a look at what we've got here. Let me just switch over the screen here and we'll get going. So maybe Marius, do you want to introduce the first piece?
Yeah,
you just spoke about it briefly, but let's back up. And so we're going to talk about kind of what we're going to show you, and then we'll jump into the product.
So the Govern AI and BI portal. So this is what we're going to show you. What you'll see in a moment is a single pane of glass through which you access all the BI tools in your ecosystem, irrespective of what tool it is, provided that the asset from that tool is a trusted asset. There's a certification workflow, which we'll show you, that allows you to onboard content and ensure that high quality content is brought in. So Mike will show this to you. Oftentimes we bring in content that has maybe a certain amount of usage, but then it gets certified, metadata can be enriched into it, anything that's required to really make sure that it's fully usable. And then it gets actually published for users to consume. This means that obsolete dashboards, they never reach either the user or the AI. And that's very important because you remember a moment ago, I told you that the AI we're going to show you, Concierge, has got the ability to look into the data sets within the trusted dashboards. So it's very important that it operates in a space where there is no noise, right? There's no bad data there. Only the trusted stuff is there.
Yeah, let's jump across to the product. So yeah, let's touch on some of the table stakes that Marius just mentioned. For those who have been on previous webinars, you've probably seen some of this, but it'll be a refresher for you. So the core of what Metric Insights is this governed portal for both BI assets, but also now AI that we'll talk about in a little bit. And what you're looking at here is kind of the end result, the catalog, if you like, of governed reports and dashboards that users might be interested in, obviously with security and permissions applied to that. But in the conversation that we're having today, let's talk about why that's important and what we're delivering with this catalog. So you'll see here each of these tiles is a particular report or asset that we've published into the catalog in a certified way with the necessary metadata that is interesting to the user and now the AI engine that we're going to look at. So what does that mean? Well, if I take something like this Power BI report here and I click on it, we get a preview of what that report is. And when it was published, we picked up metadata from Power BI, obviously the title of the report, the name of the report, descriptions potentially. We get an image of what it looks like each time it updates. But as part of the publishing process, we've attached additional metadata that could be interesting to, again, both the user and AI. So obviously this will be specific to your organizations, but things like ownership might be useful, things like data classification. Does it contain PII data? Importantly, what are the definitions and metric calculations that exist in this particular report in the form of sort of glossaries? And again, this might be coming from sources that you have today, like your data catalog and Atlan and Elation, or it might be something that you're maintaining in Metric Insights directly. But the idea is that we capture this metadata, we capture lineage about the dashboard as well. Obviously important as we start to look at, okay, where is the data coming from and what's happening that's feeding this dashboard. And ultimately, if a user clicks on it, they're accessing, in this case, an embedded version of Power BI within the Metric Insights environment. So this idea of publishing content with the necessary context is important to drive what we're going to show you in a minute through concierge. Very quickly, the way that gets into the catalog is through this idea of publishing workflows, which Marius spoke about. Think of it almost like a sort of production line for getting dashboards into the catalog. So when we plug into all the different sources of BI in your organization, when we spot that new content has been added, it effectively gets assigned to a queue where people are responsible for different stages in this workflow. Maybe you've got the analysts who are sort of signing off on it. Maybe you've got the business team signing off on it. Maybe you've got the governance team, doing their final checks before it ultimately gets certified and published into the catalog that we were just looking at. And at each of these stages, if there's metadata that isn't feeding from anywhere else, there's an opportunity to add that in, have someone responsible for adding that, tagging the dashboard, whatever it might be. But the net result, again, is that we have this foundation of certified and, I guess, documented content that is available to users and, as we're going to see in a minute, available to the AI layer that is going to interact with this.
Okay, so we've looked at the foundational layer. Obviously, the BI portal is the foundational layer, and as well as having the AI portal as part of it. Now let's look at how we build sort of the structure on top of it, right? And the concierge is that intelligence layer on top of the metadata and everything that we have in our portal. And so we're going to look at how do we look at ask built-in, in our native capability to ask data of information that's inside of Tableau and Power BI, leveraging the semantic models there and the APIs there, how we can answer questions directly against that. In addition, there's the ability for the concierge to work with any existing data agent in your organization. So as you think about it, there are going to be multiple ways to solve these problems, right? People are going to build agents that are in the databases cloud databases you provide. There are also going to be things where it makes sense to ask the data directly in Tableau, Power BI. You can pull those together into coherent experience. And the key point here is that instead of it being disjointed, you'll see when in the demo, there's smart routing where we can then go to the right place to be able to answer the question. And then finally, you're going to see that when a question is answered, we can ground that in the trusted dashboard that the user is using so that they can know for sure that they are, go verify. If it doesn't seem right, it's like, okay, well, let me go look and sanity check the results.
All right, let's jump back to the demo here. I'm just going to go back let's start with the Power BI dashboard that we were looking at a minute ago, then we'll switch across to some other sources, Tableau. So what we're talking about here is this component called concierge. If I flip that out, I can flip that out in the catalog. I can slide it out in any of the reports that I'm looking at, so that I've got the context of the report as well. And on the face of it, I can come in and answer questions, ask questions. Concierge does a number of things. We can use it for search. We can use it to ask questions about definitions, any of the metadata that we were just looking at. But we can also, within Power BI and Tableau, natively ask questions of the data in a dashboard. So here we've got a customer support example. Let me just ask my question here. here we've got a customer support example, if I can type, where we're looking at support tickets, response times, resolution times. Again, this is the live Power BI dashboard embedded on the left here. And I can go and ask a question about the data in there. So what, I see a spike in ticket volume here. Why was ticket volume so high last month? Marius, maybe talk a little bit about kind of what's happening behind the scenes here.
Yeah, so you can see here, like this information is not present on the screen, right? There's nothing here about the particular that would answer this question. But what's happening is that behind the scenes, we have pre-loaded learnings within our system, right? So which essentially like understanding of the semantic model of Power BI for this dashboard. And so when you ask the question, it's going to go get that. And you saw a moment ago, it's kind of looking at the knowledge base to understand that. Once it understands the knowledge, what's there, then it figures out, okay, how do I write one or more DAX statements to go analyze this information? And you can see the answer just came back. So if you scroll up a minute, right, it's looked at it across many different drivers. Right. So it's not just a single DAX statement. It looked at across, identified the biggest driver, in this case, returns, but it also looked across different products. I think it looked by channels. So it did multiple lines of analysis, just like a real analyst would do, right? Think about if you were being asked, if you're a BI analyst, this question, you would go and you would look at, okay, what's my underlying data structure? What are all the different dimensions? Let me slice and dice across those and figure out what's driving it. And you're getting here in something like an order of about a minute, right? It's giving you the analysis across all of those different dimensions, as well as a high-level bottom line summary that tells you the reason why it's happening.
I think, that's the key here. This is kind of a why question, right? It's getting into, whilst it took 50 seconds there, it's actually getting into a deep level of analysis that, maybe you would have picked up the phone to an analyst to do in the past. So, I can ask questions of the data. It's bringing me back that overview as Marius just talked about. But what's critical here is, if I went and asked something like, what was sales return rate in August 2025? Our data is not updating here, so pretend it's early September last year. But if I said what was sales return rate in August 2025, it's probably clear that actually this metric is not in the dashboard that you're looking at on the left there. So, that's all about our support metrics coming from, the support tables and the support semantic model. I actually have another model out there which does have our sales information and is tracking returns and our return rate. So what concierge is doing is that routing piece that Marius spoke about in the slides, in that it's sort of inferring what the question is about, and it's looking across that metadata that we spoke about to actually pass it off to another tool to answer it. So it could pass it off to another dashboard if we had that, or it could pass it off to this concept of what we refer to as domains, but in this case, third-party agents that we've registered with Metric Insights. So what you're seeing here is a list of domains where we've taken agents, some are, in this case, Microsoft Fabric data agents. We've got a Databricks one in here as well. So any third-party tool that has an MCP server that we can connect to, you can register those agents with Metric Insights Concierge. And you'll see, what happened here was we asked the question, realized it couldn't answer it natively through this Power BI dashboard, but it recognized that there is a sales Microsoft Data Fabric agent that it can pass the question off to. It did that, and it came back with the answer, and we're rendering that in Concierge here.
Yeah, and this is important because you think about this, what Mike just showed you allows you to then really use both your existing data sources and the agents that get created as these Lego bricks and build a whole structure, a complete picture over potentially even over time, right? So as something new comes along, whether it's a new dashboard that has a new data source, or whether it's a new agent that's been created that uncovers a new domain, it can be plugged into this infrastructure. And now the scope of what can be asked is increased. And you're doing that incrementally, but at the same time, you're making sure that everything you're adding is trusted. It's not a bunch of hodgepodge stuff that is not high quality.
I think that's kind of key with the speed that the space is moving as well, right? I think no one is wanting to put all their eggs in one basket at this point because the models are evolving, the technologies based on those models are evolving. So you need to have sort of a fluid way of providing what you need to users, but being able to switch out the tools and technologies behind the scenes potentially. Um, so I may go on again. This is an example. I just want to show you an example how we can do charting in here and trending as well. So again, it's taking this question, trend me that sales return rate over the last 6 months. It's again realizing that isn't available within the customer support view here, but it can pass it off to the Fabric agent that we looked at before, and there's the ability to do trending and charting natively within the Metric Insights Concierge. So that is passing the question off to Fabric. It's getting the answer back. It's then us rendering that information and charting it within Concierge here. Let me just move this over here. So, as I'm going through this conversation, if I've got something like return rate, again, grounding this in the BI that we have, I might want to search for dashboards and reports that have that in. And indeed, if I search for return rate, it tells me that there's a dashboard in this case in Tableau that has that information. So it's tying this stuff together. And similarly to being able to ask questions of Power BI data natively, I can also ask questions of Tableau data. And one, let me just put the question in here. What was, oops, can't type.
It's okay. I should forgive you for that.
Yeah, exactly. Right, last month versus previous. Yeah. So again, in this case, return rate is in the dashboard. It's passing it off to now Tableau rather than writing DAX statements. I believe it's writing VizQL statements, passing it off to the Tableau API. But why I want to highlight here is you might see on the left-hand side here that maybe I was going through my analysis and every dashboard has filters in there. I was filtering on the US region, and maybe that's what I'm focused on, and I'm looking at the return rate for that region. If I ask a question like this, it's smart enough to know sort of the context of what I'm looking at in the dashboard at that point in time, and you'll see that it's passing filter values automatically into the dashboard and asking the question in the structure of those filter values. So I'm getting the return rate from the previous year.
Yeah, and that's incredibly important because it means whether the user has selected a filter, whether they've clicked on a particular bar in there and focused on something, that context is available, and it's being passed not only, if it's something like this where it's answered directly in the Tableau data source, then it's context used to generate the VizQL to pull the data from the data source. But perhaps this would have been a question that required a Snowflake Cortex agent or a Databricks agent or a Fabric agent that you have. That same context would have been passed to that agent when asking the question, right? So what you're seeing here is a side-by-side experience that is integrated where unlike if you might say, well, wait a minute, I can just turn on Copilot in Power BI. Well, that just limits your questions to what's in that particular dashboard. This allows you to have that same kind of context, but across all of the different agents and the information that you have in your ecosystem. Because your users are not going to know whether the underlying semantic model for the dashboard will answer the question or not, nor should they have to care. Right? They should just be able to ask the question, and if there is a trusted data source somewhere that can answer it, get the answer back.
So concierge, smart routing of questions, answering natively for Tableau and Power BI, and by that I mean not having to turn on AI and those tools. We're taking care of it, but also if you do have third-party agents in place, connecting to those via MCP and being able to bring those into the mix as well. Let's move on to the proactive insights.
Good. So we've looked at the poll modality. That is one where users are going to be asking questions about information. Let's look now at how can we do root cause analysis and proactively push insights to users, which ultimately is where, if you think about it, where everyone's going to want to go, right? Because it's the zero effort way to understand what's going on in my ecosystem. So what we're going to be doing here, what we'll show you, is we can track those key KPIs that matter the most to each user, right? So that's very important. We start with that. For those particular KPIs, we'll automatically analyze and flag what changes have occurred. So whether it's week over week, month over month, day over day, whatever's relevant for that KPI, we can identify the change for that KPI that we can do heuristically. And then based on those changes that are material, we can then perform root cause analysis to uncover the why, to do that drill down and then that tells you what's happening.
All right, so let's take a look at that. So very quickly, kind of behind the scenes here, and then I'll show you the end result. So the idea is that we can track metrics and dimensionality of metrics. By that I mean how metrics are filtered and broken down, and behind the scenes in Metric Insights. Not going to get into this in detail, but where we can track when unusual values occur, when metrics hit a certain threshold, whatever it is you want to measure in your organization, but ultimately looking for those sort of significant changes in the data. And rather than just highlighting that the change happened, being able to trigger those alerts with, as Marius said, the root cause analysis around why something might be happening. So here what you're looking at is that, in this case, Power BI dashboard that we've been looking at all along, the customer support one. Rather than having to go and ask questions around why, say, ticket volume increased or first response time or whatever it might be, we can use alerts to highlight when significant changes happen with certain metrics. And when those alerts triggered, we can highlight that and have the root cause analysis of what triggered that particular alert to fire. So in this case, we've got our ticket volume example again. I can select the alert. Effectively, what the alert is saying, okay, these were the filter combinations that drove that. So it was due to, high ticket volume was due to a large number of returns happening within the organization. It's done a root cause analysis to look at sort of what the drivers were behind that high number of returns. And when I selected it, it also filtered the dashboard that I'm looking at down to, in this case, just looking at returns information and the tickets associated with that. So alerts can, I could have gone and asked this question if I thought to ask it, or we can have alerts automatically tracking the metrics, looking for significant changes, sending it to the user with the root cause analysis. And obviously, being able to deliver that to the appropriate place, whether it's Slack, Teams, whether it's in email, being able to get that information, at the point where I need to consume it every day is critical. And obviously, again, doing that for Power BI and Tableau, combining alerts into emails so that I've got everything in one place and I'm able to then, if need be, click on it and go and do more analysis on it.
Remember, when in this case, it's not necessarily the case that you need to use the data in that particular dashboard to answer the root cause analysis, because it may be that the semantic model for that dashboard's narrow, and you maybe have some other system or combination of sources that you want to tap into to be able to understand what drove the change. And so the idea is that, again, you've got this flexibility to say the dashboards maybe ground the KPI and show you that something's going on. And then the AI piece works against whatever domain is trusted to be able to answer the root cause analysis, does the analysis and synthesizes and delivers it to the user. And the advantage here is that this could be a fairly comprehensive analysis. It might be looking across multiple sources. It might be doing a lot of different things. I didn't have to wait for it, right? Because as soon as the data changed, we detected the analysis, the issue, then we generated it and pushed it out.
Okay, final piece.
All right.
Intro quick, and
So
that's
we're
it.
pulling it all together, right? So the main point here is let's show you what the experience looks like consuming all this first. What we'll show you is a KPI first experience. So the idea is that, again, you'll want to start from KPIs because that's what people are tracking. That's what they're looking at every day. We'll show you the pre-generated root cause analysis for significant changes and what the experience is like consuming that, kind of a no-wait experience for getting intelligence. And then show you how those KPIs then are easily grounded with supporting reports so that a user at any time looking at something go, wait a minute, how do I know this is real? Okay, I can go look at it and verify.
So let's jump back across here. Got these open already. So my Zoom window out the way. So within Metric Insights, so we've talked about the concept of metrics, obviously the certified reports. We have the ability to create what we call apps within the platform, custom apps, but essentially sort of UIs on top of that catalog view that we were just looking at before. And yeah, a common example, as Marius said, is this idea of using the KPIs and the metrics to drive the journey that a user takes with their BI every day. So here's an example. What you're looking at here is a particular user coming in. Maybe they're an exec manager in the organization, regional manager. They're responsible for a number of different departments down the left-hand side here, sales, customer support, supply chain. And we've identified sort of key metrics in each of those areas. Obviously, if I was a particular regional manager, this would just be showing my region or country that I'm responsible for. So filtering these down as you'd expect. And the metrics are, we're doing that analysis of what's changing. So you'll see these monthly numbers comparing to the previous month and looking at the change. And obviously, concierge is enabled for any of these. So I could go in and see the average satisfaction score is red. I could click on the concierge icon, and again, it's basically going to ask the question for me in this case. So why was satisfaction score in the red for this month compared to previous months? It'll pick up the filters that are appropriate in the same way that it did in the report. And in this case, it's recognized that it can answer this question from our customer support agent within Fabric, and it may take a minute to run, but if I open it here, it will come back with the answer. But we can also drive the alerts into this as well. So you don't want to alert for every change, but where it sees significant changes, like that ticket volume spiking almost 50%, we want to take those alerts that we're pre-generating and make them available through here as well. So you'll see in this case, this particular metric has got an alert icon on it. This is a summary of the pre-generated root cause analysis around why ticket volume was so high relating to the spike in returns that we had there. And again, using this to ground the analysis back into the BI as well, if I were to click on this particular metric, it could link back to, again, that report that we've been looking at that has more details in it. So, pulling it all together, the ability to summarize things into metrics, the ability to ask questions of those metrics, but proactively push findings to users and allowing them to drill into the significant changes that are happening at any point in time is sort of the critical piece to all of this.
Yeah, and you'll decide, obviously, based on the criticality of the use case, the importance of the metric, the audience, whether you want to, to pre-generate those alerts, take the token cost for that, or just wait until the question's been asked, right? So it gives you the flexibility to decide that on a KPI by KPI basis.
All right, I think that's got us to the end here, Marius. Thank you for everyone for sticking through that. Hopefully it was interesting to you guys. We want to open it up for Q&A, and whilst that's happening, I'm gonna start doing a couple of draws here. We have an Amazon gift card that we're gonna give away, $50, I think, and then I think there's some analogy here with the Back to the Future Lego set, but we have the DeLorean Back to the Future Lego set that we're going to be doing a drawing for as well. And if I call out your name, please just pop a note in the chat with your the email address that you want us to reach out to you. We have your registration email, which we'll use, but if there's some other way that you want us to contact you, please pop it in the chat. So I guess with that, let's got a bunch of chat going on here. Thank you everyone for the comments on the presentation. So
if they don't want to put their email in the chat, they should just put it in the Q&A window, right? Because then it won't be publicly.
It's not public.
Oh, it's not public.
Yeah,
okay,
that's right.
Okay.
Either works. Or if you're happy with us using the registration email, then that's fine as well. Okay, let's get to some questions. Okay, one here, Marius. What are the biggest gaps between pilot AI, BI deployments and production rollouts? And I guess that's a good point. Whilst you think about that, Marius, we did do the poll early on.
Yeah,
let's take a quick look at that. I can share the results here. You should be seeing that, everyone. So yeah. Looks like, well done to the few people who got into full deployment with solutions, but I think, unsurprisingly, a pretty heavy bent towards still evaluations and prototypes and testing, probably for a lot of the reasons you were talking about.
Yeah, and this is, by the way, very representative of what we see in general in the audience, in the folks that we talk to all the time. It is still early days. People are still exploring what options they should look at. They're thinking about maybe they've started an early prototype, getting some early results, maybe turned on AI in a bunch of different places to see how it's working, and they're evaluating. So, kudos to everyone here, just that kind of leaning in and thinking about how to come up with solutions that work. I think the difference between a prototype and production is really the ability to have something that has sustained value, right? It's prototypes in many ways are quite easy to do because you can just kind of have a very narrow scope and have a few proof points, show it to users, and they can ask a few questions, get answers, give you some feedback, right? So that's a pretty easy cycle to go through. It's a good cycle to exercise, to understand the technology set that you're working in, to understand that you can pull all the pieces together. So we absolutely encourage everyone to do prototypes. But it is important to understand that the difference between that and production falls into kind of two main vectors, I would say, to think about. One is the depth that you need to cover, right? You're going to get, when you go to wide scale adoption in any particular subject area, you're going to get a lot of different types of questions, and you've got to be able to handle them effectively. So making sure that you have, nothing falls out of distribution, so to speak. In other words, the questions don't come in related to that subject area that are perfectly reasonable to the user, but you don't have any way to answer. You want to make sure you've got coverage for that, thinking through that. So that kind of breadth and then breadth across domain, right? It can't just be very narrow. It needs to be broader because people are used to using, ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, where you can ask anything. So you can't, going live with something that has a very narrow focus of what it can answer. It tends to be underwhelming to people, and they won't typically go and use it. Again, if you're doing the push, you can do that with a narrow scope because they don't have to do anything. But for the pull model, the agents that they're talking, you need to have quite a bit of breadth before you can get some broad-based ability.
Practical question here, Marius. What do we need to do in Tableau or Power BI to turn metric insights chat capabilities
Oh,
on?
yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
question. So, so I think Mike mentioned this earlier, but we don't rely on any kind of product specific AI capability for those tools to work. In the case of Power BI, it is just a switching on a particular setting of metric insights to say this thing should be available. So you can control which ones you set it for. There's some permissions that the account has to have to work. But beyond that, it's all stuff will be is documented on a website, health site. There's nothing else there. And then on the Tableau side, it simply has to be a published data source. So, your Tableau, if you're familiar with Tableau, of course, that Tableau has both local data sources that you can have within a dashboard and also published data sources. VizQL, the API that we use to be able to get questions, is only available on published data source because those are considered governed. So any dashboard that you have that you want to enable this for, either if it already has a published data source, it's just flipping a toggle. If not, then you simply need to transition that data source, convert it over to be a published data source from a local source, which just takes a few steps, but that's all.
Okay, a couple of questions on embedding here. So one was in the chat here, I think. Do you have any customers embedding the Metric Insights app into their own applications? If yes, are those customers sharing reports and insights internally or externally with their own clients? Both, right?
Yeah, we have
Yeah.
both. We have both.
Uh,
So we have customers
Yeah.
that have obviously internal sharing is very common. There are also customers that have the ability to share reports externally with clients. Sometimes those are different instances, because you just from a governance perspective there, you want the things that are externally visible to be completely firewalled off.
Yeah.
But you can actually, with Metric Insight Security, you can manage one instance across both if you wanted to.
The final part of that question is around customizability of the of Metric Insights in terms of functionality. So both in terms of sort of permissions, functionality, but also look and feel and branding and all that sort of thing is fully configurable within Metric Insights as well.
Yeah. As well as on the AI layer, we didn't mention this, but you're really connecting to your own agent. The system can sit inside of your VPN or in your firewall or cloud or whatever it is, and it's not talking to our AI or nothing. None of the questions are going outside of whatever ecosystem you have vetted and approved for AI use.
How are we doing for time here? We got two
We
more
have
minutes.
2 more minutes.
Yeah,
So
we might do
come around here.
Yeah, let's look quickly. So
Try to
there's a
be
bunch
concise.
of stuff in the if you see anything in the
Okay.
Q&A there, I'm just looking
Sure.
in the chat.
Okay, in the Q&A, can
Yeah.
MI be integrated with Power BI embedded? We run a separate workspace for each client in a multi-tenant environment. Yeah, well, we can embed Power BI. I'm not sure if I'm 100% understanding. It is normal for people to have multiple workspaces. If you have clients across multiple workspaces, we can absolutely embed it in a way where there's a connection that respects that workspace and has security across that workspace. So individual user can't have access to anything outside that workspace. So I believe that the answer is yes. And yeah, so I think Power BI embedded, you're referring to the fact that instead of using OAuth, you would be using a service account. And I should mention this because we didn't talk about this earlier. By default, all of those agentic interactions would enforce row-level security. They would use OAuth. So that is for the AI piece. That's sort of the standard approach.
Okay, we're coming up against time. I just ran random drawings for our gift card and the Lego set. So Karen Porter, the Amazon gift card is coming your way. We have your email if you'd like us to contact you in a different way. Again, drop it into the chat or Q&A. And Matthew Shaw, SHAW, the Lego set of the DeLorean is on its way to you. Please again drop the email into the chat if it's different to what we have. One of the team will reach out to you and figure out where we're sending those things.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, we're at the top of the hour. Thank you for the comments in the chat. This is recorded. We'll get it up on YouTube ASAP and share the recording with everyone. Thanks, Marius, and hope to talk to people soon.
Yeah, thanks everyone for joining.